right, everybody, welcome to JCLive, your weekly source for JCL news and fun. I am Kurt Ristroff, your host and the publications chair for the National Junior Classical League, an organization of middle and high school students in classics courses. And with us today is a very special guest, somebody I've known, we were just talking before the stream, somebody I've known for, 10 years at least. Somebody I've known forever. Please welcome Nick DiLeo, who is, hey Nick, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, Kurt?
Let's see. Nick is a former LJCLer, Louisiana JCLer. We went to the same high school. He was a couple of years behind me, and after JCL, Nick moved to, he was, I guess, given an appointment. I don't know what the right term is.
Yeah.
He accepted an appointment at the United States Military Academy at West Point. Is that the proper name?
Yeah, West Point.
Yeah. And so he's there. And this is your fourth year?
Yeah, coming up my senior year next year.
Yeah. So he's been there for a few years, and Nick is an outstanding JCL alum. So I told everybody last week, for the past couple of weeks, that this week's show was going to be a surprise. This is the surprise, is that we have Nick here with us to chat about what he remembers about JCL, what he gained from JCL, all that kind of stuff. So, all right, there's a few people in the chat who recognize you and remember you. So Drew Alvarez, for example, is watching.
Hey, Drew. It's good to hear from you, man.
Yeah. So let's see, we've got some show announcements, but we can do those a little bit later. All the information for people, if you need to know, is in the description. The only thing I want to mention before we get going, and we'll do all the formal announcements at the end, this weekend, Tennessee JCL is having a charity stream that starts at noon Central on Saturday, March 13th. All the money that they raise is going to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. There's a link to that. The event, the Twitch stream, everything else is in the description of this video. So if y'all are interested, go check out TJCL's charity stream. It'll be this weekend, this Saturday, the 13th at noon Central. So with that, Nick, can you tell us, you said you're doing well. Happy Monday. You had a good day, all that?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had a day off here today. And so I spent the day just snowboarding around on the ski slope we have right off the campus here. So I'm pretty beat up because it was my first time snowboarding in my life.
Okay. So you can snowboard on a ski slope?
Yeah,
there aren't
absolutely.
separate facilities for snowboarding and skiing? I don't know the first thing about this.
No, we're all just going. No, you and me both, man. We're all just going down the same slope together, figuring it out, tumbling down. Definitely fell down more times than I actually went down the slope. That was awesome.
Okay, cool. What was the occasion for the day off?
I'm not quite certain. Because certain holidays, for some reason, warrant a day off here, and then others don't. So I just kind of take them as they come and give my thanks for what I get. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess the first thing we can talk about is you were in a lot of things in high school. You were in JCL, you were in Boy Scouts, you did a ton of extracurriculars, you went to some really awesome summer camps. So I know you have just a plethora of experiences when you think back about high school. What stands out when you think about JCL in particular and Latin? And why'd you decide to take Latin and all that kind of stuff? Can you tell us your story?
It all began when I was born. No, so, oh my gosh, Kurt. So JCL, I think what I remember most, it would have to always be the conventions. I mean, like that's the obvious answers, is that the heavy hitter, the conventions are always so much fun to go to. And like that's like what I look forward to every year, was going to that convention and then having that time to just like see everyone once again from all over, just hanging out, doing my best to do the test, and then going to those events. But I mean, even like the smaller things like Saturnalia, just even like school-based meetings are so much fun. I mean, that's what kept me in for like that whole time. But like, why did I take Latin in the first place? So the original intention was like, the thought going through my mind was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to learn so many languages. I'm going to take Latin and I will have access to all the Romance languages. And then I came to West Point. I took Russian. And so I was taking Russian, and I was like, oh no, I took Latin. What am I going to do? And it turns out that once you get past the Cyrillic alphabet, it's very much a Romance language. A lot of languages have a very Germanic base, a very Romance base, without it even being quite so obvious. So I was actually able to learn Russian fairly well, even due to the Latin experience that I had. So that was kind of surprising to me. But otherwise, I mean, Latin comes up in terms of like my life experience now. Most often, I would say either in class or in church, and with the occasional language as well.
Okay. Yeah, so we hear that a lot, that it's easier to learn another language after you've studied Latin because it's so formal. You know, there's so many grammar rules, it's so structured that then when you go to learn another language, and I guess with Russian they're both from Proto-Indo-European, I guess, right? So
yeah,
there's that relation there. But even if you were to go and study like an Asian language, apparently coming from that formal, rigorous Latin education, you can still pick it up a little bit easier than you would have otherwise, which I love.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I've actually recently been studying a little bit of Japanese because here at West Point we have an officer here who's from Japan. Mm-hmm. He's from specifically the Self-Defense Force of Japan. And I was over for dinner at his house the other night, and I was actually just thinking about Latin again because I was having to translate, kind of get in my head, like how to say, like, I play Nintendo Switch to his kids. Mm-hmm. Because they're playing Nintendo Switch is like, well, here's that moment where I kind of have to apply that in the moment, like, translation to actually say something. And I said what I tried to say. I was like, Watashi mo Nintendo Switch aru, and they were like, what? They're like,
oh, no.
And I said it again, and they're like, oh, you play Nintendo Switch. It's like, yeah. Yeah.
There
what
you go.
About you? Did you ever pursue any languages after you learned Latin, or did you mostly stick with Latin?
No, I've been bad about that. I did Latin for 5 years in high school, and then in college kept up with Latin. And I was in Germany for a summer in college and tried to pick that up a little bit, but didn't get very far. I've been really wanting to go back. I've got a friend, actually, a coworker now, who's got dual citizenship between the U.S. and Italy, and he's from Pennsylvania, but his family's Italian. He's got family in Italy. He's been to Italy a whole bunch. He speaks Italian, so I'm thinking of trying. And his name is also Nick, and I've been thinking of asking him to train me a little bit in Italian, because I think Italian or French would be the language I'd want to pivot to next, to just like make sure I still remember my Romance languages and the sentence structure and everything else.
Wow, that is incredible. I recently, I don't really know how it happened, but I somehow got involved with doing piano and singing again.
Nice.
And the person who's helping me with that has me doing a bunch of Italian opera, and I definitely find that is definitely where Latin has been helping the most. Because the pronunciation is ridiculous.
I was going to say, is Latin helping or is Latin hurting? Like,
oh, absolutely.
Because I'd imagine
helping.
that if I go to try and speak Italian, I'm going to be pronouncing all the words like they're Latin. And I know that there are differences, right? Like the C's or CH's instead of K's, that kind of thing. But it's helpful.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the flow is the same. Is the most important part.
Okay.
Is what I find. Because like you can make the small changes from W's to V's and C's to K's and all that. But at the end of the day, it's the flow of the language, and it's of course very, very similar to Latin. At least I find it to be. It's because I'm doing it wrong. I don't quite know.
Cool. No, that sounds cool. And of course, that is something that we didn't mention earlier, but that was yet another one of the many extracurriculars that you were heavily involved with. Was music. So you got to high school. You wanted to take Latin. You definitely didn't have any influence from any family members for taking Latin.
Definitely not my two sisters, one of which now teaches Latin.
Yeah. And then you found yourself in a JCL chapter one way or another. So how'd that happen?
You mean the JCL club at Kappa Chi?
Yeah. Like, why'd you end up joining? Was that your sister's influence?
Well, I mean, of course, I felt like the logical decision. At the time, I was not in too many clubs. And I think, I don't remember who it was, I think it was either you or at the time it might have been Gavin DeVilliers. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember. One of those two was just such a powerful personality that I saw them and I was just like, whoa, what? I was like, I gotta see what's up with that guy. And so I went to Latin Club, having just started Latin, and just the people there. I was like, these are my homies. Like these are my people. They're all super weird, they're all super goofy, super smart, and they just love life. And I was like, that's what I want. I started going to the meetings, and I just loved the way things were run. The way y'all did it was just, I mean, for lack of a better term, it was like enchanting. It was like, this is my environment. Like you walked into the meeting, and it was like things changed. You start off the meeting, we made a bunch of noise, and it was like we were in a separate dimension. And I was hooked. Like that was honestly it. I was like, I love what's going on here. The people are great, and what we do is pretty cool as well. And I just flew with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
you
don't know,
got.
what brought you there?
Oh, I joined. Gosh, I have to think back now because it's been a while since I joined JCL. Um, well, certainly my older brother had been in Latin, right, and had been in JCL, and so I wanted to take Latin and be in JCL because of that. But the what really got me hooked was I went to the first meeting of the year was the pizza invitational. Um, back when I don't want to say the year on the stream, but um, back then it was a while ago, and the club secretary I think had just come back from the national convention, and he I'm sure there's the funny newsletter, the satirical newsletter that they put out every day at the national convention. That's the convention ear, and I'm sure that he had just been to nationals and read the convention ear a whole bunch, because he had written this torch for Catholic Eye that was very much in that style, like really satirical, really funny, making fun of the teachers, making fun of the other officers, like funny made up stories, all this kind of stuff. And I was reading this, and I'm coming from like my favorite books around that time were the series of unfortunate events books, all very dry and satirical and all this. And so I'm reading this newsletter. I'm like, this is hilarious. This stuff is so funny. I have to be in this club, and I need to like do this. I need to write these. And that's a couple of years later. I ended up starting to write those. But that was it. I think was going to that meeting. Like you said, make a whole bunch of noise at the beginning of the meeting. There was this really funny newsletter, and that kept me hooked, honestly, when I knew like, oh, there's going to be a new torch at the meeting today. I have to go to the meeting today.
Yeah.
That was one of the big draws for me. And you got involved, not writing the newsletter, but you were the historian for a year or two, right?
That's right. So I was a historian. Oh man, it's been that long. For I think two years, and then I did president my junior year. Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
I don't quite remember.
that sounds about right. Either your junior or senior year, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you were taking pictures, making scrapbooks, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember seeing the products that the previous historians had made and seeing a lot of stuff, the stuff at conventions. And I just remember thinking to myself, I was like, oh my gosh, these are some big shoes to fill. Because like for the first time, I was like, someone had like given like this golden orb to me, this golden orb of like responsibility. And I was like, oh no, that's scary. I have to do things now. But I think being kind of thrown into the cold water like that, I think first as a sophomore or freshman, I don't know, as a sophomore, let's say sophomore. No, it was freshman, that's right, because I had gone my 8th grade year to Catholic. Being thrown into kind of that cold water of like responsibility and leadership was really uncomfortable, but it helped me grow and become the necessary like stepping stone for the skills that like I try to work on and continue to grow in today.
That was my next question, is how much of that has been transferable to your path from high school to where you are now?
Absolutely, especially my time as president, because I can tell you right now, I very specifically remember being with the president at the time, Gavin DeVilliers, at the end of that particular JCL convention. I was like, well, what do I do? I was like, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea what I'm going to do. Super unsure. As I never had anything like that. Like I never been expected to lead people. I never been expected to even really like do anything. And so going into it, I was just lost. And so I relied a lot on like my predecessor's advice and guidance. But a lot of it was also just kind of blind driving, doing my best. I don't really know how it turned out. I hope it turned out nicely. But that definitely, there's no doubt about it. Like the leadership that I work on here at West Point was definitely not byproduct, but a product of that time that I spent as president, with like a team of people dedicated to the same purpose and cause. Because like I still get the same questions today in my job series. Like, how do I motivate people to do what they want to do? How do I motivate people to get this organization to a place that is good? I still run into the same leadership questions every day here.
That's terrific. I should mention, I don't know how to phrase this. There are some clubs, some JCL chapters where the teachers are running the show. And in our club, the student officers are running the show. The teachers were not, telling us what meetings to do and what events to plan and that kind of stuff. And so when Nick says that he was, thrown into the deep end, and he was the man, he was the guy in charge. That's really, really true. That's how the club was structured. So I'm glad that was transferable.
Definitely remember going to our teacher at the time, and I was like, "Hey, what do we do here?" And he's like, "What do we do?" And I was like, "I'll go figure that out, sir. We'll come up with something."
Yeah. Mr. Webb sent me just now, he's watching, and he sent me a picture of you doing the roll call of schools at LJCL convention in 2017. It's, I'll see if I can, he texted it to me, so I can't put it on the stream easily, but I'll see if I can send it from my phone to my computer and put it up so you can see it. But let's see, while I'm doing all of that, what are some of the specific memories from conventions and events and things that really stand out to you?
Well, you're talking about pictures right now, and I'm immediately thinking to the pictures of me doing karaoke on my phone in my pajamas. I'm wearing like dinosaur pajamas and like a frosty like t-shirt. So that's a big one. Always doing karaoke every convention. That was probably the highlight. Always my favorite. One thing I really enjoyed doing was going around to all of the nominees or all of the candidates for positions that year, and I was always just like so intrigued by like what these people had going on in their minds to run for state and national positions. Because to me, I was like, wow, that's wild. That's such a big thing. Why would you do that? And so I'd always like interview them, and little did they know that it had no effect on anything, at least for me, because it was just my own like satisfaction. I just wanted to know. But they always thought that I was like coming to like inform Catholic at JCL, and so they would always be like super awesome, intelligent answers. And I was walking like, cool, thanks. And they're like, you're not gonna write any of that down? I'm like, well, I mean, it was really cool.
I remember you doing that. That was really good. Because you were doing that even before you were like the club president. Like it was your freshman year, and you were doing that. You were asking all these candidates like good questions, and they better have something ready, because this like 14-year-old is coming to ask them questions, and they, who knows how he's going to vote. He might be the head of his chapter. They don't know. And then a few years later, you were.
But that is so right. It was so much fun. I think another one I really enjoy it's always the room time, because there's little time that you're actually in your room. Mm-hmm. But for like the 3 hours at night when you're sleeping that you're in your room, because you get no sleep at JCL, that was, oh my gosh, that was the times you would enter into this new realm where it's like time doesn't exist, sleep is not relevant, and it's time to drink 3 Mountain Dews and hang out and talk about JCL things and just talk about life. So that was always huge for me. Always a good time. Kurt Tallman was always a very impressive memory. I think my last JCL, I went and I watched a Kurt Tallman for the first time, because goodness knows I wasn't able to compete in one. And that was so cool. There's like there's people here who know stuff, and like there's people there who like knew every answer for things like the most obscure mythology and grammatical structures of these things I did not know. And I was like, whoa, that is so cool. I was just blown away, absolutely blown away. And I think the biggest memory, the absolute biggest one, is always the march. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
and it was JCL always happens right before the choir concert, the weekend before the choir concerts for me.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I would go into this JCL convention, and I'm like drinking tea, drinking honey. I'm not drinking honey, doing my best to prepare myself, but just to no avail. We get to that march, just walking around that what was it like apartment? What was it?
It was a
Like a
Holiday
conference
Inn.
center, a Holiday Inn, screaming my voice off. And then we finish up, and I turn to like a nearby choir member who's also GCL, and we're not singing too well tomorrow. I was like, yep, we're not gonna be doing too good.
Yeah, we always ran into that. The scheduling was very unfortunate. So the event that he's describing for the folks who aren't from Louisiana is the procession on which we have in Louisiana on the second to last day of the state convention on the Saturday night, where convention goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and yeah, all the schools march around the Holiday Inn where we have convention and do spirit for. Would you believe sometimes it's only 20 minutes?
No,
It feels like forever.
You're a liar. You're absolutely lying to me, right? It's not 20 minutes.
It's usually 2 laps around the hotel. And depending on where you are in the line, it can be longer or shorter. But I remember the first time I wasn't in it and I was just watching it. I think it was only 20 or 25 minutes, and it felt when you do it, it feels like an hour. And you're putting absolutely everything you have into it. And that was always one of my absolute favorite things at LJCL. They have a procession like that at Nationals, but it's not quite the same. Like
Really?
It's usually during the day. It's not at night. So it's usually hot outside because it's during the day in July, on a college campus somewhere, and so it's really hot, and so you can't scream as loud because you're having to conserve a little bit. You have to not pass out. Yeah. So it's a little different.
I remember my first year. I don't know who told me this, or rather didn't tell me this. I was like, hey, how many laps is this? And then someone nearby was like, usually 17. And I was like, what?
No.
And then someone else says it's a secret. And so we started marching, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm gonna survive 3 more laps. I was like on the second lap, and I was like, I don't know how we're gonna do this. I don't have any voice left.
Well, you made it through. Yeah, it's only 2 laps, and then there's a big banquet right afterwards, and it's really nice.
Always bittersweet because you get this amazing food, but then like it's time to wrap up. After that, you have the morning, and it's like you wake up out of a dream. Like time to pack up your bags.
Yeah, it is sad. But then there's usually the next year, and then you can always come back and be SCL and all that. So, were you in the talent show one of those years?
I was.
What did you do? Did you? Somebody was playing a guitar and you were singing? I'm trying to remember.
I think one year I participated in like an act, like in a play of some mythology. I'd like to explain what I don't remember. But then the second year, I definitely did something musical. Someone had a guitar and I sang something very poorly. I genuinely do not remember what it was. I think it's like trauma based, and so my mind is blocking out my performance for myself. My karaoke's were much better, I think.
Well, speaking of your karaoke's, I have this whole time been. We're gonna see if this works. There it is. Here are the pictures.
Oh, you see that robe right there? Yeah. I've still got it. Absolutely. Definitely still have that robe with me.
Yep. So that's you doing karaoke, and then this is you doing roll call for Catholic High in 2017. I don't remember what the theme was or anything.
Oh my gosh. I think on the right there, that's Alex Davis, and on the bottom there, that's Anna Somerville. Those are good times. That was absolutely wild.
Yep.
Oh, that reminds me. The biggest task I had as historian was making one of those posters. That was a job and a half.
Yeah, making the school banner, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you had to get people to come help you color, and then you had people who just couldn't color like me. And I think we had Francis Din, I believe, do most of the design for our particular band. I think it's in my room still.
Cool. So, pivoting from JCL a little bit, can you tell us more about West Point and your life now? How you got there and what you're studying and what it's like?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a basic rundown, but please feel free to like clarify further with questions.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like my junior summer. I think was whenever I realized I wanted to do not just the military, but I wanted to do officership, which means going to college in order to join the military. I was like, well, how do I want to do that? And I was like, West Point. West Point's the way to go. That's the highest I can shoot realistically, and keep the most doors open. Because at the time, I didn't really know my passions. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and that felt like the best kind of way to go to kind of go wherever I wanted after that. So I got here. What am I studying? I study applied psychology and I minor in counterterrorism. I kind of combine those two because what happens here is after you graduate, do 5 years of service.
Mm-hmm.
So after I graduate here, I will do 5 years of mandatory military service in the Army, hopefully as a military intelligence and infantry officer. And then once the 5 years are up, I can kind of, decide where I want to go based off of how the experience has gone. And so I'm kind of deciding if I want to go kind of like a criminal justice route, if I want to do something law enforcement wise, or if I want to kind of stay in the military and continue my career there.
Mm-hmm.
But what do I do here? I mean, honestly, it's just a lot. The best way to explain it is we're graded in three ways here, and this is what your life is comprised of. We're graded academically, we're graded physically, and we're graded militarily. So you can also say we're graded based on our character as well. And so that's basically what our lives look like here. When I'm not studying, I'm working out. And when I'm not working out, I'm probably doing training on the weekends and all throughout the summer. And whenever I'm not doing either of those three things, I'm probably watching Netflix or finding some way to relax the best I can. Mm-hmm. That's really what life looks like here. It's a lot of work, but it's good work, and it's work that I definitely love and definitely love doing. Not to say it isn't difficult, but I mean, like, whenever you're doing something you love, is it really that difficult, right?
Yeah. And so it sounds like you've had some opportunities to get training in some interesting things that not a lot of people study in college. You said a minor in counterterrorism, and you mentioned earlier leadership training. I know there's a really famous class at West Point that's it's the history of warfare, I think is what it is, and they start with like wars in Greek and Roman times and sort of go through military history in the West. I don't know if you've gotten to take any of those, but can you tell us about some of those other ones you mentioned?
Yeah, I can tell you about some of the classes and trainings I've done. So you're talking about mill art is something that I actually haven't taken yet, but I'm actually super excited to take that. That's going to be really cool. But right now, for example, a class that I'm in is military leadership, which is for us, the code is like PL300. And what that looks like, that's kind of the more character side of things. That looks at how what does a leader look like? How should a leader lead? What does like kind of theories on leadership and how to apply them, and then also how those things like apply to our lives. But then I've also done a whole slew of classes. Because of counterterrorism, I've taken classes on homeland security, classes on special operations and low intensity conflict, classes on like I said, Russian. I took 2 semesters of Russian. I'm trying to think of any kind of big hitter classes I've taken. Well, every year we take military science classes, but that's kind of inherent to kind of the officer ROTC path / academy path, where we learn how to be an officer, but also like what that looks like as an actual like job. But during the summer, every summer, we're just specific trainings that we do. So my first summer here, I went through the equivalent of the academy's basic training. Yeah. Where they kind of break you down and they get you ready to go through what is West Point. They kind of humble you and just put you in a place where you can learn better. And then the next summer, I basically did that, but with more dignity. we went through something called CFT, where you do the same kind of trainings, but you just do them at a higher level. It's kind of reinforcing the principles you learn that first year.
Mm-hmm.
And then last summer, I had what's called my LTP or LDP. It's a leadership development program. So you go back through that basic training, but this time you're the cadre. You are the person who leads that training. And the particular job that I had, the route that I took, was counselor. There's only 9 counselors out of the 100-something cadre in that training, and my job was to specialize in mental health for the new cadets. Because as you can imagine, it's a very stressful experience for a lot of the new cadets coming through. So it's important to have someone who is there to kind of cater to those needs on the spot and help them kind of get back into the fight or get back into the run of things whenever things go south. And I actually continued that job this last semester in my company. So cadets here, students here are broke up into companies. It's kind of like our it's strange to explain. We're basically just grouped into groups of 130 people.
Yeah.
And those are like your close-knit people that you really do everything with. And that's kind of like how leadership works. So if I were to lead someone, it would be within my company.
Mm-hmm.
So last semester, I was a counselor for my company, I3. We are the I3 Icemen. And so this semester, I kind of operate as a squad leader. And so I lead a group of 6 people for military matters, and I oversee their academic success and their physical success. And I just make sure they're kind of doing what they're supposed to be doing.
That's awesome.
It's a way to train all the students' leaderships by having them be leading each other.
So everybody's got a role like that within the company?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So the freshmen are the ones being led. That first year, their job is to be led and to learn how to do that in a humble but excellent manner. And then as a sophomore, you lead one person, and that's one freshman, one fleet. And then as a junior, you're either doing a squad leader or a growth position. So what that means is a squad leader is 6 people. That group is 6 people. Or you lead a platoon of like, let's say 24 to 30-ish people. Or you do a growth position where you do something like counselor, or perhaps you do something related to character. My roommate is an honor NCO, which means he does things related to like the honor code here. Catholic high students might be familiar with how an honor code works. But there's also things for sexual assault and harassment things. Mm-hmm. We have personnel here who overlook and are experts on those and provide resources related to those matters. Then we also have people like trust reps, people who you can confide in, things like that. And then your your senior year, you usually are leading a platoon as a platoon leader, as a cadet, or you're leading like the company as a whole, all 130 people, or you do another growth position, but for the Corps at large. So instead of just leading a company, you might lead multiple companies as a certain position. Yeah, sorry, I know it's a lot of just really
this is terrific.
Random stuff. Yeah. I hope that made the slightest bit of sense.
It made a lot of sense, and I'm glad you went through it all in that level of detail, because I've always wondered how that is structured. You know, when everybody's trying to learn how to be a leader, somebody's got to be the person who's being led, and you described that really well. So
yeah,
I cleared that up in my head perfectly.
I'm glad it helped, because I know it can get really in the weeds sometimes. And I'm trying to stop myself before I just get really, detailed about it.
Yeah, no, that's good. I meant to ask, have you happened to have met anybody else who was in JCL while you've been at West Point?
Well, Ezra Grant is actually here. Ezra Grant was a year ahead of me at Catholic High, but he's also in JCL with me. So he went to the prep school, and I went here, and so we actually met up in the same grade. And so we see each other every so often, and so that's really cool. And we'll talk about we talked about our teacher and how he switched jobs, and we talk about the going-ons of our school in JCL, and it's funny to talk about convention as well.
Gotcha. Okay. I know there was back in 2011, the national second vice president went to West Point. His name was Zach Hall. I forget which state he was from, but you know, it's great to have JCLers everywhere. We have JCLers in law school and med school and grad school and trades and the military and everything. So I'm glad that there are JCLers all over, and there are two at West Point right now.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty more.
At least two, yes, I should say.
Oh, at least two. Because plenty of people here know Latin.
Oh, really?
But because we don't really have it as an option for language here. It's kind of hard to find opportunity. It's not often that I'm like, I took Latin for this reason. Someone's like, me too, unless it's like in a relevant context.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, like it always comes up. I talk about high school, right? I got to brag about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I haven't. I don't think I've met anyone outside my state just yet who's done JCL.
Okay, but they're probably there.
Oh, absolutely. No, there's no doubt about it.
And when you find them, get them all together, and you can come back on the show, and we can all talk about everybody's JCL experience. Let's see. So if you're talking to a high schooler right now, maybe they're in JCL, maybe they're not, and they're interested in something like trying to get into West Point, would you encourage, like, what would you say to them? Beyond go for it and all that kind of stuff. Like, what leadership advice in particular would you have for somebody who's in high school, who's trying to build that skill set, who's trying to Zach Hall was from Massachusetts. Thank you, Mr. Webb. What would you say to that person who's like a freshman or sophomore in high school?
Oh man, to a freshman. So throughout my time here, I've occasionally received calls from people who are looking to do just that. Mm-hmm. What it really comes down to is the first question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to be an officer? Do you want to do it? Because there's people who come here for the clout, right? I mean, like, it's very much a well-known school. It's prestigious to a degree. And it comes with a lot of responsibility and a lot of this and that. But the reality is, at the end of the day, you're an officer, and the likelihood is that you could face combat. And so the question becomes, is that what you want? Because that's what you could get. So once you get past that question, once you figure out, is that what I want for my life? Which is super, super deep and dark. But I mean, like, once you get past that, it becomes a question of, where am I at? Mm-hmm. And where you kind of need to be at is, you gotta, if you want it, you have your motivation. Once you have your motivation, you want to start working towards those pillars. You want to be academically proficient. You want to be able to, if you've been taking the ACT, you want to kind of keep shooting at that. I would keep shooting at that goal. Kind of look at those ranges for like what kind of gets a person at the West Point. The range is kind of a spread between a 28 and a 35 or 36. Kind of get in that range, trying to get as high as possible and keep trying at it. And then just buff up your GPA as much as possible, but also care about what you're learning about. Mm-hmm. That's the best thing I can say, because what we learn most, you take a lot of general education credits here. We actually come out with a bachelor's of science regardless of what you take, because of the amount of engineering and the amount of science classes that you take, just because they have us do it. And so as a part of that, a lot of people are like, why do we do this? Well, I think I've come to realize that the reality is that whenever you have a comprehensive education, you become a comprehensive problem solver. You become someone who knows how to go at things from different angles. So take your classes and do well in them, but not just because you need a GPA, but because you want to learn. You want to learn what's in them. So far, get a good ACT, get a good GPA, and care about what you're learning about. Try to like learning, because it's easy to get bogged down. It's super easy to get bogged down and to dislike it. But you gotta find the joy in it. The second thing would be physical fitness. Absolutely be shooting to be as physically fit as possible. Work that 2 mile, get your push-ups, get your sit-ups, but also try and be comprehensively fit. Like, that word keeps coming up a lot. Mm-hmm. The Academy looks for people who are holistic. It looks for people who are who have that overall perspective on their ability. A sport really, really helps. Actually, I didn't have a sport when I started considering it, and the swimming team was very, very kind to me and allowed me to come in to their team and join them. And I was able to use that on my resume for West Point. And it also strengthened me a lot. The time I
Just gonna
had
say,
swimming translated over here.
yeah, you're a good swimmer, man.
Well, definitely not. I was actually the slowest on the team, but that being said, it translates very well to here. My swimming abilities definitely came in very clutch in some particular areas here. We have a survival swimming class where they kind of throw you in a bunch of situations in the water, and you got to kind of figure it out. So physical fitness, it being holistically fit and doing your best to not just the best way to put it is don't just be a Ferrari, don't be super specialized, but kind of try and go for that overall fitness. And then after that, it's everything. Do JCL, do clubs, be an officer. Every time you are given an opportunity, take that opportunity. Even if you don't know what's going on in the slightest amount, that is the best opportunity you can find. Because whenever you're thrown into the deep end with things, that means you're going to grow. That means you're going to be stressed, and it's going to be scary, but that means you're absolutely going to grow. And so doing leadership opportunities, joining new clubs, meeting new people, doing anything that makes you a better person, a more worldly person. And by worldly, I mean like, I want to say the Renaissance person, but like someone who involved in a lot of areas. My time as an officer in JCL definitely helped. My time as an officer in a lot of clubs definitely helped. My time in Boy Scouts helped tremendously. Absolutely. So just getting a wide breadth of experiences. Whenever someone says, hey, do you want to go do this? The first thought in your mind should be, yeah, let's go on an adventure. Let's rock out. So that's awesome. My biggest advice. So yeah, be fit, get smart. You don't have to be smart. You do not have to be smart, but you have to be willing to do the work, to work to the best of your academic ability. Because if you work hard and you put in the hours, you will get back those returns. And go on adventures. Oh, and make sure to write it all down. I want you to write it down.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, so you don't forget about them.
Well, I say sometimes when we have like a really good monologue like that, like this isn't a YouTube channel that does clips, but if we did clips of our live streams, that would have been a clip. Clip out that 2 minutes of Nick's advice. That was terrific. That's awesome.
Sorry, I just monologued at you.
No, that's good. That's good because these people get to hear me talk every week. This week is the only week they get to hear you talk. So, one question, because we're starting to come up on time. When we had the doctor panel on, and when we had the business person panel and the lawyer panel, they all said, well, hey, Latin in particular was useful for me because they characterized it as we learned some about the world. We weren't just learning the mechanics of a language. We were learning about this civilization. We were learning the history. We were learning the humanity, all this kind of stuff. And when you were talking about developing a love for learning and trying to have as holistic an education as possible, that clicked in my mind. I thought, oh, well, it was, in your opinion, was Latin class, in particular in high school, was Latin part of that?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Latin has the benefit. I didn't take any other languages in high school, and I've only taken Russian now. But Latin had the benefit. So first, Latin. The way we learn Latin, I would say, is very characteristic of how many languages are learned. And so, like I said, those pathways are developed. Like you learn how to learn, and that's the most valuable thing that you can ever learn. I know I'm using the word "learn" a lot. Because whenever you are seeing how something is done and you're able to apply that to different areas that aren't just that same thing, so to multiple languages, that becomes an invaluable skill that you're able to repeat for as many languages as you can or as you desire to learn. But then also, past just the linguistic parts, reading about Hadrian, reading about Trojan War, reading about everything. Those things, they're not just little snippets that we read for fun. They are, and they help us learn, but they provide us insight into history, into people, because it's just the human story. And those things give us context for why we do things today, why things are like they are today. They set precedents for what is going on. And that kind of perspective is just invaluable because, it's good enough to be able to look one way at something and to describe it well. But to be able to look at all sides of that same thing and to describe it excellently is a whole nother matter. And is, in my opinion, far more valuable. And that's what Latin provides. It provides you perspective into the world at large, because Latin isn't just a story of one small or one fairly large area on the map at a particular point in time, but it's a story about how that has progressed throughout history and become a critical part of the infrastructure, of engineering, of every bit of anything today, of any bit of culture. I mean, Latin and the classics has its hands dipped in every bit of culture, and it provides you that ability to kind of look into that and see those connections and truly appreciate what's going on. I recently wrote an essay about myself for that leadership class I told you about, and one of the things that I wrote was one of my core values is appreciation of beauty. That's a really big part of my life, is appreciating things that are beautiful. And Latin is a huge part of that, because just people and everything they've been doing is an immensely beautiful thing. From the structures they make to the words they speak, it's just the whole story of when you sit down in class, what is going to be the super cool thing I'm learning today.
You know, this might have to become a clip, a channel that does clips. You're giving me so many clips. That's terrific, Nick. Gosh. And this is what we want to capture. Exactly. Like, this is exactly what we wanted, what I was hoping we'd talk about. Because there are a lot of people who join Latin in their freshman year. They start taking Latin, and they're not exactly sure why. You know, they read a Percy Jackson book, and they thought, you know, mythology's cool, and so they end up in Latin class, and then they get exposed to this whole world that you just described, and then they join JCL, and they get exposed to that whole world too, on top of everything else. And we want as many people as possible to know about that opportunity. You know, parents who have kids who are coming up on high school or middle school where there's Latin, you know, we want them to know about this opportunity, those kinds of things. So that's precisely what I was hoping to capture.
Well, I should say that Kurt, to the streamers, Kurt isn't paying me. And these things aren't just me trying to pump up Latin. These things are very genuinely my thoughts on Latin and on JCL.
No, but of course, you know, next time we're both in Baton Rouge, we'll go get beignets again. That'll be good.
That'd be excellent.
Well, are there any questions for Nick in the chat? There's about a 20-second delay, so we're going to have to wait until any questions come in. But if anybody has any last-minute questions for Nick before we switch over, the next thing to do, I'll bring on a couple of the national officers, and they give officer reports at the end of each of these shows. So what you and I will do is, if I'll mute myself in this Google Meet, and if you can do the same, then after 5 or 10 minutes of the officers giving their reports, we'll end the show, and I'll come back and like tell you goodbye properly and all that afterwards. Just to let you know that's what's next. But even if there aren't any questions from the audience, this has been terrific. I really appreciate it, Nick. It's been a pleasure, you know, through Boy Scouts and JCL and everything else. Knowing you all these years, and it's fun to be able to bring good friends on the show and talk about this kind of stuff. Mr. Webb says, good luck and thanks for your service, Nick. Yeah. So Mr. Webb is one of our regular viewers. Drew Alvarez says, thank you, Nick. Very informative. It looks like nobody has any questions for Nick. Now's y'all's chance. He's a busy guy. You heard, when he's not studying, he's working out, and when he's not working out, he's doing military practice on the weekends, and when he's not doing that, he's gotta sleep. Let's see. Rihanna Duncan says thank you. Maxine Mant says go Bears and go Army. There you go. Okay, well, in that case, I think I'll bring the national officers on. But thanks so much, Nick. I really, really appreciate it, and I'll come say goodbye to you properly in a couple of minutes.
Oh, thank you. It really is an honor.
You're very welcome. Thanks for what you did for JCL when you were in high school, and thanks for what you're doing now.
Hope to come back someday as an SCLer.
Yeah, oh yeah. Okay, see you in a bit. All right, man. Isn't Nick awesome? He's a good friend, good dude. Known him for a long time. So now I'm going to admit. Let's see. Rais, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
All right. I can hear you too. One sec. I'm going to bring you on. I think Daniel's going to be joining us too in just a minute. Daniel, if you're watching the show, if you already tried to join and I didn't let you in on time, just try rejoining. But while he does that, Rais, how's it going?
Are you?
I'm good. Man, I just have had a great time talking with Nick DiLeo for the past 50 minutes. If you didn't get a chance to catch the stream, definitely watch the replay. What have you got for us tonight?
Okay, so let me just start with a brief introduction. So I think it's a common fact that humans love animals, and no animals are closer to our hearts than our pets. So I found this great article when I was just browsing through some archaeological news about a pet cemetery built by the ancient Romans somewhere in Egypt in the port of Berenice. And this site was found like approximately 10 years ago, but it's now been thoroughly explored, and it's learned that it has over 600 different pets of like different Roman officials and Egyptian elites and everything. And so basically, whenever someone's pet would die, they would give them like a proper burial in this like, it's not a mass grave, but it's like a mausoleum where there's several different areas for different pets. And this may be surprisingly, or this might be surprising or unsurprising, but the majority of pets turned out to be cats. So if anyone's familiar, Egyptians did have a bit of cat mythos within their gods. There was a lot of syncretism between like the animistic nature of like the African landscape, and then kind of the whole Greco-Roman influence that kind of helped form the Egyptian the cosmology and vice versa and everything. So this was just a great way for Egyptians and Romans who interacted with Egyptians to give a proper thanks to their pets. And I mean, it kind of strikes some resemblance to like Egyptian mummification and the preservation of the body beyond its initial life on Earth.
So these were
that was pretty cool.
Preserved remains? They were mummified pets, or hard to know because it's decomposed?
They're not 100% sure.
Okay.
But the cool thing is that the cat, a bunch of the, like, I believe 90% of them were cats. So the majority of the cat remains still had intact skeletal structures. So they could identify that they were indeed cats, or at least early ancestors of them.
Gotcha.
So that's just something I found really interesting.
Yeah, where'd you find that?
Let's see, sciencemagazine.org. I can put the link in the JCLive chat if you want.
Sure, yeah. I'm gonna...
Also, Daniel is waiting.
He's waiting. Is he in the...
Yeah, he messaged me on Discord.
Can you tell him to request? Or, hang on, I can refresh the page, but I don't know what that's going to do to the stream, so stand by. Okay, we're back with... here we go.
There?
Yeah, here comes Daniel.
And I'll drop that link in the chat right now.
Terrific. Thanks, Race. And Daniel, sorry about the technical delay, but you're on. How's it going?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, great. Sorry for that little delay.
No trouble.
But, so today I wanted to talk to you all about Pompeii once again. So I think some people will remember about two sessions ago, or two of my sessions ago, I talked about the Thermopolium found in Pompeii, which is like an ancient food stand. And today, I guess I'm becoming the Pompeii guy. I'd like to tell you all about a really exciting find that was just discovered really recently. So I've added a link. I sent it to Mr. Ristov. He can drop it in chat, or it might be in the description. But very recently, they discovered a ceremonial wagon in Pompeii that was probably used for wedding ceremonies and local, public events and functions. And beyond, just the material culture value of having an ancient vehicle, which, are surprisingly hard to find, given that they're all wooden and a lot of that wood decomposes over time. there's a really thrilling story in here because it was actually discovered because there were tunnels running around it that were used to smuggle antiquities out of Pompeii. And the archaeologists were only in this area because the public prosecutor of the Italian province or region was investigating the smuggling of antiquities. So, this is actually kind of a really thrilling and exciting little story here because, you don't really think of something so monumental being found just as a result of a criminal investigation. But, it's really interesting just what turns up when you're investigating antiquity smuggling.
Yeah. How did it get preserved?
So it was, with the pyroclastic flow from the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, that when the entire town went under, it went under too. And it looks like it was in the stables just as it normally was, which is really exciting to find it in situ, just there as it would have been every day.
Okay. I didn't realize that wood was preserved in the pyroclastic flow like people. Or something,
Well, I believe
something that's wooden, right?
it carbonized, which you're the chemist here, Mr. Ristoff, so you would know a little bit more about that than I would. But so a lot of it carbonized, but there were also parts that didn't remain, but the imprint of them remained in the sediment, just like the bodies of some of the victims of the eruption of Mount Vesuvius do. And what they do is, once they find this kind of chasm in the ground, before they very carefully fill it with plaster. So that's why we have all these casts of human remains from Pompeii. That's what they did with some parts of the chariot as well. But
Gotcha.
They do have some of the original material, which is even more exciting.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing. It's always interesting to know that, or to find out that they are finding new things at the site. I put the link in the chat for everybody who wants to check that out. I will add it to the description of the video afterwards. Cool. Well, thank you both. Those are good things to hear about. And we'll have you both back we'll have you both back next week. That's a perfect segue. So we mentioned the Tennessee JCL charity stream this Saturday at the beginning of the show. Information for that is in the video description. On JCLive next week, it is the Ides of March. So if you've ever wanted to stab the national officers or potentially be stabbed by the national officers, they will be playing Among Us for the JCLive session. So, an Among Us game can have 10 people in it, and there are only 7 national officers. So, if you're in the audience and you want to join, you'll be able to see the link to join, and you'll be able to join in. It'll be a good, fun time with plenty of audience involvement. So, see y'all next week for that. I'm going to do a big advertising campaign on social media for that one, but that's going to be a ton of fun with the officers next week. And then the shows after that, let me pull up the list here. Among Us with the NJCL officers for the Ides of March. And then, yes, the week after, on March 22nd, we will be having a panel discussion from JCL to economics. So we have a former JCLer and former NSCL officer who is a professor at the Wharton School of Business, which is a big deal. He's an economics professor. He's going to come on. He's a friend. He's going to talk to us about that. And then there is another PhD in economics who's just finishing up graduate school. So the two of them will come on and we'll talk all about economic theory and stuff. I imagine that lecture might get that interview panel discussion might get a little technical, but it's going to be a good one. That'll be March 22nd. And then March 29th, JCLive will become SCLive for an evening. So the national SCL officers are going to come on and run the show for the evening. So those are the next 3 shows. Among Us on March 15th, from JCL to Economics on March 22nd, and SCLive on March 29th. Thanks, everybody, for watching. That's our show for tonight. Thanks so much to Nick DiLeo for coming on and talking about his experiences in JCL and his time at West Point. Thanks to Daniel and Rais for coming on and telling us about their officer reports. We'll see y'all next week. Cheers.